good.
You good? Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Antonino. Tonight we're going to do fettuccine bolognese. There's a lot of different steps to it, and we're going to make it very simple for everyone. We'll have this dish done within an hour, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Very simple. First, we're going to start off with an onion. It's a medium-sized onion. I'm going to remove the skin from the outside, and then remove the fine, slippery skin from the top of the onion, so that way it's going to be a lot easier to cut. Now, cutting
What the
the
hell is you doing? Cooking class?
is I'm going to
What's he cooking?
horizontal.
Sotakowy,
Horizontal cuts into the onion, and from there, vertical. Then I'm going to cut it perpendicular. Then on the very bottom, I'm just going to do a rough cut because it's very difficult to chop. Then we're going to put this with our onions. And maybe a bigger bowl would be nice, but that'll work. That's all we need, really. And then the next item that we're going to use is carrot. And I'm going to show you how to do this as well. With the carrot, celery, and the garlic, the finer you cut it up, the better you want. The carrot's actually used as a sweetener instead of sugar. And to get the sweetness from the carrot, you need to peel it. So we'll do that real quick. That aside. In half. Cut this in half. We want basically small pieces that we're going to put in a food processor. The more even pieces that you get when you put it inside the food processor, the more uniform pieces that you'll get out of the food processor. So we put this in. Do a quick chop. Roughly about 2 or 3 pulses. Done. Actually, can you see this up close? Actually, we're going to do it right over here. You can see how fine it is. The purpose that we're cutting it so fine is we don't want to see chunks of celery. We don't want to see chunks of carrot. It's because it's not something that you normally see inside of a bolognese sauce or any type of tomato sauce. So we kind of want that just to cook off, but have the benefits in there. Leave this in here and then start our cooking. We're going to start off with a cold pan. Put it in our oil. Not going crazy with the oil, but because we're going to have extra fats when we add the meat to it. We're going to add our celery and our garlic. And then finally, we're going to add our cut up carrot. The reason why we're starting it off in a cold pan is we want to stew all the vegetables inside. We want the flavor to come out. If we had a hot pan, the actual vegetables will fry and they would create like a hard shell of it, and it wouldn't release any of the flavors. We're doing this because we're doing it in stages. Each stage we're building flavor. And then from there, that's what it's all about, is building flavor. So this is going to take a couple of minutes because we want the end result of the onion to be somewhat translucent, and that takes a few minutes. And then when that happens, that's when we can start adding the other ingredients, starting off with the herbs, the dried herbs, the salt, pepper, dried parsley, and the dried basil. The reason why we're adding the dry herbs now is by adding the liquids, which is the tomato paste, the wine, tomatoes, that's going to hydrate the dried herbs and pull out a lot of flavor. If you're doing fresh herbs, you always have to do that last, because if you do it early, the flavors come out and then they dissipate and you lose all that flavor. You don't have that much flavor left inside your dish. And salt, if you look at the recipe, there's not that much salt added to it because there's salt in the Parmesan cheese that we're going to be putting in. So that's added salt. And then another secret that every chef has is the pasta water. So you're going to look at this and say, where do you get the water from? The Hudson River? No. Because this is a beef dish, a great thing to do is put beef broth inside your water. Think of pasta as a sponge, and that sponge is soaking up all that water. So because the beef broth has salt in it, you're not adding any extra salt to it because it's going to have that from the beef broth, and it's going to pick up a lot of that beef flavor. So you're adding flavors continuously depending on what you're doing and what stage that you're doing it on. Okay. And this is taking its time slowly. Any day now? Anybody have questions I can answer? Is there any questions that? As that heats up.
You're making this look very easy, Antonino.
It is. You know, when you break it down, you're really making a meat sauce. That's what it comes down to. You're just making a basic meat sauce with a fancy name. And if you treat it as that, it becomes extremely easy. Just follow the steps because each step is just another level of flavor. And you'd be surprised if you can kind of do the same technique with everything you cook. You're going to find out the things that you cook on a regular basis are going to have more flavor.
Antonio, how do you cut onions without crying?
I am the inside.
'Cause I can't cut onions without crying.
Well, it's just a matter of technique. You know, once you kind of way of cutting onions. I mean, you can cut it like how I just did, where I did horizontal cuts and I did vertical cuts, then I cut it perpendicular. That's a traditional way, like a French way of cutting an onion. If you cut it if you cut it perpendicular and then vertically, you're gonna get the same result just about. You might get a couple of pieces that might be a little bit bigger than others. You'll get the same end result.
Antonino, do you have a minute while that's heating up for me to just jump in real quick?
Yes.
I just wanted to first and foremost thank the Culture Committee for really helping organize this event. Matt, Pat, Rania as our Culture Committee chairs, as well as everyone, you know, Donna Nelson, Judy Dudgeon, and everyone. Just huge shout out for really organizing this. Number two, Donna or Rania, if one of you want to jump in, I know we have Red Day coming up on May 13th, and one of the things we wanted to do on today's call was really fundraise for that event. So do one of you guys want to jump in? And you guys, you know, really took the bull by the horn on this one. Donna, do you? I think Rania's driving. So I don't think,
Yeah, sure,
anyway.
absolutely. Okay,
Yeah,
guys, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying this class. As most of you know, we do have Red Day every year with Keller Williams, and that is a give back to the community where we pick a place that is really in need and doesn't have funds, and we help them restore their facility. This year, we've picked the Wayne Counseling Center, and it's on the Hamburg Turnpike, and they help women in transition, substance abuse, and children. And we're going to be doing the work there on May 13th. So we're doing some fundraising. So for today, we have generous donations that we are going to be giving away by tomorrow. 2 $50 gift cards, one from William Sonoma from Nick and Ileana at Get a Rate, and then one gift card from Shane Force, as well as a gift basket of Italian goodies worth about $100. So we are asking for donations towards our fundraiser for Red Day. And if you donate $10, you can send it to my Venmo, which I'll put in the chat. We'll get your name entered once, and for a $20 donation, we'll get your name entered 3 times. So hopefully we'll get a good amount of money started for our fundraiser, and then by tomorrow we'll pick the winners.
Great. And Shane, I see you're on the call. Thank you so much for donating. I don't know if I see Nick or Ileana, but thank you guys for helping support us today. Awesome. Back to you, Antonino.
You're welcome. Actually, like how everything is cooking so far, we've got about another minute. So the onions are going to be somewhat translucent and very soft. And that's what we're looking for. That's our guide to proceed with the next step, which is going to be the herbs. We're going to put that all in at the same time. So that way they're all going to have plenty of time to hydrate and bring out a lot of flavor from what we're making. And I guarantee you, once you're using gas at home, it's going to be a lot faster. Can you see this pretty well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks great.
And now we're going to add our salt, pepper, dried basil, dried parsley. We're going to stir that in. It's going to start picking up a lot of the moisture. You're going to see that there's hardly any moisture on the bottom of the pan, which is that's being all absorbed by the herbs. And that's going to help us with our next step. Our next step is going to be adding the tomato paste. And I'm using a spatula because this is by far one of the greatest tools that you could use in a kitchen because there's no waste. And now what we're going to do now is kind of stir in the tomato paste. We're going to let it get brown a little bit. And what that's doing is it's deglazing the bottom of the pan. It's picking up some color. It's adding a lot of richness to the dish. And that's what another step that we want to do to kind of create more flavor. Traditionally, when you're doing a typical meat sauce, it's going to take a couple of hours. Doing it this way, we can cut the time literally in half.
Antonino, do you ever teach cooking? You do such a good job explaining this.
I have. I've done it a number of times. I used to work at this one place called Chef Central in Paramus. And I cooked, well, I'm sorry, right now we're going to add the meat. I worked at a place called Chef Central where we had cooking classes, we had celebrity demos, and it was a lot of fun. But real estate's better. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm really just breaking up the meat because I don't want big chunks of meat. We're using Chuck, and we're using Chuck because he's a good guy. No, I'm just kidding. We're using a low-fat cut of meat, and that's important. The reason behind it is if you use a higher fat content, the fat is going to just dissipate in the pan, and when you serve your dish, you're going to find you're going to have less meat. And the whole point of it is to have as much meat as possible with a lot of flavor. So now we can see that it's getting there. Cut it up. Now, another key thing to look for when doing this is once the meat is almost fully cooked, that's when we continue on to the next step, which is going to be adding the wine. The wine has 2 functions to it. Well, maybe a couple of more. One, you're adding acidity from the wine to kind of smack the flavors up a little bit. And then you're also adding liquid and you're adding more flavor of the wine. Because everything's good with wine. At this point, we're just going to let it cook a little bit. So it kind of caramelizes, picks up a lot more flavor. It might brown a little on the bottom, but that's a good thing because we're with the wine, well, the liquid that we're going to be adding now, it's going to pull up all that fond, which is the burnt bits on the bottom of the pan. And to every chef, that's gold, because that's what makes a dish taste from good to great. And when you control that, that's where you want to be. So it's slowly browning, mix it up a little bit, chop up those big pieces that form. Just keep in mind, the hottest pot in the pan is always going to be right below where the burner is. So that part you always have to give more attention to than anywhere else in the pan, because you don't want to burn, but you don't want to undercook and overcook certain parts of the dishes that you're making. And one key thing that when you're cooking is you always want to taste the food that you're making. Ideally, we could have tasted the food before the meat got in, just to see if there was plenty of salt, well, enough salt. Right now, don't taste it because there's meat that's in there that's still raw. At that stage, you can get sick. You don't want to get sick. You just want to eat. So once the meat is fully cooked, that's at a stage where you can actually taste it. Think about what seasoning that you might need to add, either salt, pepper, more dried herbs. You can still do it at this stage, and just take it from there. And it's interesting because since food cooks at different times, you're always tasting. You just don't taste at the very end. You want to taste at different stages, because at the very end, it might come to a point where you just don't have the ability to adjust a flavor or fix what just happened. In regards to cooking versus baking, you don't know until it's over. Either you pass with a great dish or you fail horribly. Cooking, you have that freedom to really say, hey, okay, I can add something to it to kind of change the flavor profile a little bit and make it more palatable. We've just got a few more minutes left to really get this going. And again, we don't want it fully cooked, because we want some of that fat to really come out while we're cooking and flavor the tomato sauce that we're going to add to it. Our next step is going to be adding wine. And the reason why we're adding a red wine, well, wine in general, you want to always add a wine that you would like to drink. It doesn't have to be the most expensive, and preferably it's not the most expensive wine that you have, because that's just a lot of money that you're not really going to get the full flavor of. And let's give it another minute. If you have those store-bought cooking wine that you buy at ShopRite and Acme, there's a great place to put it. It's called the garbage can. It's a horrible flavor if you drink it on its own. And the key thing is, it's that same flavor that's going to come through. It's overbearingly salty. It's not going to have the flavors that you really want it to have to come through, to give it a lot of body, a lot of flavor. Right? It looks like we are at a stage where we're going to add the red wine to it. Get it around. We don't want too much wine, even though wine's great because we just want enough that the meat sauce is going to absorb it right now, and it's going to deglaze the bottom of the pan. And again, we're doing it for the fond. And you can see once the bottom of the pan looks just about no liquid whatsoever, that's when we want to go on to the next step, which is going to be the tomato sauce. Well, the canned tomatoes. And again, here we go. Putting in the canned tomatoes.
What kind of tomatoes do you use?
Why, thank you for asking. We're using crushed tomatoes. They're San Marzano tomatoes. And you're thinking, well, what's so special about San Marzano tomatoes? Well, it's how they're grown. They're grown in Italy. There is a spot in Italy called Mount Vesuvius. And
Pompeii.
actually, you're right. I'm
Mount
sorry.
Vesuvius.
Yeah. Well,
Destroyed Pompeii.
yes. Well, it's grown in that region. What makes that that area so good is the volcanic lava is it kind of settles in the soil, gives it a special quality about it, and then from there, the tomatoes really pick it up, and you can notice a very big difference in the flavor. And when you go buy the tomatoes, make sure it has a seal that says that it's from that area. That's very important.
Now, are they diced or what kind
These-
of
these
thing
are
is
crushed.
it? Like a crush?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can get any type of tomato, just like you can get any type of non-San Marzano tomato. And then also the tomato paste that we used was San Marzano. So now we mixed in the water. And you see it's kind of loose. At this stage, we just want it to simmer. We want a little bit of liquid to kind of reduce, kind of build up more flavor. And any questions? No? Okay, I thought that was
More people tuning in.
awesome. So once it's reduced a little bit, you can see a little bit of a bubble popping through. Let's stir it up to kind of release any steam that's building up. That's going to reduce down just a little bit. Typically, the wider the pot for reducing any type of sauce or anything that you're making, the more release of steam and moisture comes out. And that's what we're looking for right now, because we really want it to be a little bit thicker. Also, we want to let it cook a little bit longer because you don't want that raw taste of tomato. You want a fresher taste of tomato coming through. Stir it around. It seems like we're stirring it up a little much, but we're just releasing a lot of the built up steam that's inside the tomato sauce. So it's going to have plenty of time to really cook down and not be sitting in a lot of.
How many people should this hot sauce?
This should feed about 8 people. Then it's going to do 7 people.
Wants 2 plates. I was gonna say some of my hungry hounds are around. It might feed 4.
So right now, we're going to give it a taste. And again, we're tasting to make sure that it doesn't taste raw. We're looking for a taste that's going to have a lot of richness. There's no lack of spices. And another key thing is that it's not too salty. Because once we add the next step, which is going to be cheese, the cheese is going to have a lot of salt in it. And once we're at that stage, it's going to be very difficult to kind of remove that flavor from the sauce, which is going to be the challenge. So thickness wise, it's pretty good. We'll give it another minute before we taste it again, because it did have a little bit of a raw taste to it. But again, it's going to cook off. You can see that there's a lot of steam building up, starting to bubble.
Antonino, while you're working on that, do you have I know you're doing it at fettuccine, right? tonight?
Yes.
But you can almost use this sauce for any pasta, both, anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sauce. You can put it on any pasta. You can put it on, well, fettuccine is really more traditional. You can put it on elbows. You can put it on
Bow tie girl.
bow tie. Nothing stopping you from any pasta that you want. If you have little kids, you get the little ditalini, which is just literally tiny, tiny tubes of pasta. You can put it on ziti. If you're making lasagna, meat sauce is perfect for that. If you're doing other dishes like moussaka, I would say let it sit overnight and then add your other spices to it, then reheat it so you can have a perfect moussaka if that's what you're looking for.
What about just a loaf of bread?
See, that's what I do.
Okay, yeah.
I
I
just
say
take,
I'd be with the bread, the way he talks about tasting. I'd have the bread on the side and be scooping the bread.
you see, like this would be like one serving of one and a loaf of bread, and that's what it's all about.
I was thinking about that, about the wine, you know, a little for the pot, a little for the cook, a little for the pot.
Well, that's for later. You see a lot of steam is coming out.
Antonio, what temperature should this be cooking at, and how much does it change the flavor if it's higher or lower?
Well, I mean, if the temperature, you're looking for medium heat when you're using a gas range, and you start off at medium heat, because if you go too high, it's going to break down the vegetables too fast, and it's not going to give enough time for the food to really simmer and release a lot of flavor. But if it's too low, it's just going to sit there and get all soggy. So temperature-wise in degrees, I really can't give you an answer on that. It's just really more, you're doing it more by sight and the temperature of your range.
Awesome, thanks.
Very well. Let's give it a quick test. Not bad, maybe a little bit longer. We'll get our cheese ready. Now, in regards to cheese, you want to get block of cheese. You don't want to get the cheese that's already grated. The grated cheese, it's just bland. There's not enough flavor. Freshly grated cheese is where it's at. Flavor-wise, texture-wise, the different things that you can use for it. You're going to see that we're going to use the fresh cheese for garnish as well as putting it in the dish. So it's going to have a lot of great flavor, and it's also going to look really cool. Now we're going to add in our cheese. We're going to stir it up. And again, this is adding salt to the sauce. And actually, it's also going to help thicken up the sauce a little bit. So at this stage, we're going to talk about the pasta. You got the water nice and hot. As long as there's a strong simmer to it, like what's going on right now, it's hot enough to cook the pasta. You always want to actually just let it get a little bit hotter because of it's going to cook a little bit faster. And again, going back to the pasta water, because this is a beef dish, I added beef broth to this to kind of soak up the flavor of the beef inside the pasta. Always think of pasta and rice as sponges, and it's going to soak up any flavor that you add to it. So if it's cooking in water, it's going to taste like water, you know, depending on the ingredient that is. If it's rice, it's going to taste like rice with water. If it's, you know, pasta, it's going to taste like water, unless you let it cook inside the pasta sauce for a little bit. Some restaurants do that. I choose not to, because you're getting a lot of flavor from the sauce, which is nice, but when you add another level of flavor to the sauce that you're adding, that's even more flavor. And that's what it's about. If you're going to spend the time to cook this, you might as well get as much benefit of it as possible in regards to getting as much flavor as possible.
And you use the broth, beef broth, not a stock.
It's basically the same flavor wise.
And it's not all beef stock. You did water and.
Correct. I use water and beef stock. Depending if you get low sodium, I prefer you use low sodium versus the salted one because you can always add salt to the water. You just can't take it away. And that's crucial. You don't want anything too salty. Our next step is going to be cutting up of the herbs. Let me put it on a plate, show you. We're going to cut up the basil first while everything is getting nice and hot. So we're pinching off the herb so you get nice big leaves. And that's what we want is the bigger leaves. And we want some small leaves as well. Let's get some small leaves. The reason why we want small leaves is we're going to roll all of this basil up, almost like a cigar. And the big leaves are going to hold the small leaves in place while I cut it. So what we're going to do here, you want the pretty side down on the big leaves. Do a couple big ones first to give it some body. Then we're going to get the small ones laying flat. You want the stems to be all in the same direction because once we cut this, we're going to cut it this way. And if you have the stems going the same way that you're cutting, you're probably going to get a big mouthful of stem, and that's not so good. So here again, we're ending off with the bigger leaves. Now we're going to roll it like a cigar. Roll it nice and tight. And hold it tight. Now we're going to cut it. And this is what you can call it a chiffonade, but really it's julienne basil. The rocking motion that we're doing. The knife never leaves the cutting board. And when you cut, you're actually going through. You're going through and you're continuing forward. My fingers are tucked behind the knife. My knife is actually rubbing against the knuckle. And that's what's guiding me to the thickness that I want. I'm going to give it a little bit of fluff. With that, we got a little bit less of a half cup, so we'll do a little bit more. Actually, let's go back to this tomato sauce. It's bubbling nicely. Maybe reducing a little too quickly, so we'll cut back on the heat. And again, back to the basil. Roll it up like a cigar, roll away from you. And then the seam side down, cut and push through. And again, I'm using this part of my hand to direct the knife where it's got to cut. So that way my fingers are naturally tucked in and I don't have to worry about myself getting cut. If somebody bumps me, I'm still safe. I'm still going to get angry if somebody bumps into me, but not there. Now for the parsley, we're going to use flat leaf parsley. So parsley, this is also a flat leaf or it's Italian parsley. There's another type of parsley, which is a curly parsley. Big difference. Flat leaf parsley is going to have a lot more flavor to it, where curly parsley is really good to sprinkle and make things look pretty, or things that you really that you're not expecting a lot of flavor from. So you get the head or the bunch and you cut it on a bias. So you're really kind of trimming off the leaves without getting much stem. The stem is edible, and it's always good to save the stem because there's a lot of flavor in it. And that's just something that you can put into a stock if you're going to make your own stock. Just like onion peel, just like carrot peel, you can still use it. I normally just put it in a Ziploc bag, and I will keep it in my freezer until I decide that I want to make a stock. And I use that instead of getting the big fresh onions, because it's going to produce the same flavor. And I'm saving a ton of money by doing that. So now we're going to cut. I have my hand on the tip of the knife as it's rocking back and forth. And again, the knife is not leaving the cutting board unless I'm moving everything together. I'm cutting it up to a stage where it's small enough to release a lot of flavor, but big enough for me to know that it's parsley. And the same thing with the basil. I'm small enough to release a lot of flavor, but big enough to see what you're making. So we're going to add this. This is about a half cup. Now we're going to add this to our sauce. Sauce is ready now. It's done. I'm going to take it off the heat, and I'm going to let it rest, because I don't want the flavors of the parsley or the basil to go away, to evaporate from the sauce. I want those flavors to really come through. So right now, I'm using an electric burner, and that holds the heat for a decent amount of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it right off the heat onto a board. Wow. I'm going to put a lid on it so it stays nice and hot. And then in goes the pasta. A bag of pasta is roughly going to serve 8 people. In my house, it'll serve 2.
Yeah.
And here tonight, it's going to serve 1, 2, 3.
You don't put any oil in the water?
No. No need to. Now, the big question is, okay, is it going to boil over? You're going to get that foam that just, it's aggravating. What that foam is, the starches from the pasta floating around in the water. And what happens is it goes to the very top. And as the water bubbles, it creates bubbles in the starch. And it just builds up, and then it actually comes to a point where it just foams over because the bubbles don't have anywhere to go. And there's 2 ways of curing that. Putting a wooden spoon is not one of them on top of the pot. So basically, the best way to do it is lower your heat. You know, all you need is hot water to cook your pasta. Stir it around, lower it down a little bit, let it cook, let it do its thing. You can put a lid back on so it cooks a little bit faster. And you hear that saying, a watch pot never cooks fast enough, is because a watch pot basically means that there's no lid on it. A lid's going to trap the heat inside. So if you have the lid on it, you can't see it. If the lid's off, you can.
You can't see it,
And then all the,
except you have a clear lid.
now I have a clear lid, so it's like kind of like cheating.
There goes
So
that too. Sorry.
forget about what I was saying on that.
He asked you to bring a pot. He didn't say, don't bring over the clear lid.
Exactly.
Stop watching.
Yeah, peeking.
Where's our bread? It's over
We
there.
have over there. think that should be another class. Where we do garlic bread and a whole bunch of different cheeses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Twist my arm.
There's a class on sharpening knives.
Yeah, we're gonna do that too, and how to maintain your knives, how to clean your knives,
Oh, I'd be
different
interested
knife
in
cuts, because that's I forgot whose question was about not crying when
Yeah,
cutting.
onions.
And the key thing is knowing how to cut an onion efficiently is going to prevent you from crying. Because you just do it.
I have onion
Oh, you have onion goggles? No, if you had ski goggles, they work better. No.
goggles. Just about that.
There's
No.
some kid on TikTok that puts a wet paper towel down on the chopping board next to the onion, and supposedly the wet paper towel will prevent you from crying.
They say run in cold water too, but that won't.
That's what the kids tell me.
Well, you see, the thing is, when you cut the onion open, or you cut into the cells of the onion, it releases a gas. And it's that gas that makes you cry. So unless you had a fan that's blowing by, that's really the only other way that you can really prevent it from making you cry. But the person standing next to you is going to be crying like a baby.
Or use a milder onion.
Yeah, if you use a milder onion, like a Vidalia Sweet, that you're going to notice a big difference in flavor. Really depends on what you're going to be using it for. I mean, if you're going to be using shallots, that's another mild onion, which is really nice. But something like this, it's not worthwhile using that onion because you're not going to get the flavor that you're looking for. The flavors will evaporate too quickly. And we said something about like the watch pot is, takes forever.
Yeah. Little wives telling what.
Well, we like it al dente.
Yeah.
Crunchy.
Crunchy.
So you put the fresh herbs in already now and it's sitting.
And it's sitting. I have the top on it because what's going to happen is if the flavor from the herbs is evaporating from the sauce, it's going to condense on top of the pan and drip right back inside the pot. So I'm not going to lose any flavor that way. But if I had the top off, the flavor would be out here rather than down here.
So you put the fresh herbs in at the end for pretty much everything you cook, right?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Because you want to taste it. If you're going to put it in, you want to taste it.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing because fresh herbs, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
So you want to get the most flavor out of what little you got. Again, let's do a little test on it. Stir it around.
I will not be happy if you don't use the wall and see it stick.
Oh no. I'm a firm believer of actually tasting it. And then there's also ways of actually holding the pasta and snapping the pasta. If there's a little speck of white inside the center part of the pasta, it's close to being al dente. And what al dente means to the tooth. And you want some bite to it, which kind of makes it more chewable, makes it more enjoyable. When you're doing fresh pasta, it's a different taste to it. It's really more of a point where you're getting a lot of great flavors from the fresh pasta. It doesn't get as al dente as store-bought pasta because it's just store-bought pasta, not for nothing, sits for a long period of time and it dries out completely. Where fresh pasta, there's a lot of moisture inside. Before you even cook it, it cooks a lot faster. And I believe you get a lot more flavor from fresh pasta. And also you can flavor the pasta itself outside of the liquid that you're cooking it in. Like tomato pasta, spinach pasta, saffron pasta, mushroom pasta, chocolate pasta, which is, it's kind of nice.
Really?
Yeah,
What did you do with that?
Oh, you have vanilla meatballs, of course. Vanilla ice cream meatballs. And a little bit of chocolate sauce on top of that bit. It's nice.
Keep it in my cake.
Or you can do like a ravioli with it, like a dessert ravioli. You can do mascarpone inside and kind of get like the fillings of it, like a cheesecake inside of that. So when you cut into it, it's going to be nice and gooey. You can even put marshmallows, Nutella inside, which is really nice. So when it melts and you cut into it, it's like all over the place. It's nice. Yeah.
say, can you say like 20 minutes ago?
No, it's 5 o'clock, it's right around the corner.
And I'm just cooking it, separating the pasta from sticking together. Just get the heat up a little bit more, so it cooks a little bit faster. You can feel by the pot, it's nice because it's still hot. That'll keep it warm for a good half hour, 45 minutes at a good temperature before you eat. Any questions? Anybody?
What do you do with the rest of the wine?
Yeah.
We drink it.
One of us brought plastic cups.
That's right.
Bye.
Thank you, Antonino.
You're welcome. You just get a straw, stick it in. What wine?
Single serve.
That's right.
Exactly.
What is your ratio of broth to water?
I would probably say about 50-50.
Wow.
50-50. Because you want as much flavor into your pasta as possible, but you don't want it to be too much flavor where it overpowers the dish or it makes the dish a little off flavored. Is there anybody here doing it at the same time?
We are.
Right.
Awesome, thank you.
How's it going at home? You have any questions or?
By the way, thank you.
I think it's going pretty well.
Awesome.
I can show you.
Pedro and Maria, they're doing it together. That's awesome.
Yep, that's our sauce right there. Probably won't be ready as soon as yours, but our appetite will be ready. That's for sure.
That sounds great. That's what it's all about. It looks nice, and the key thing is you're at the stage where you're reducing it down. Did you add the cheese yet?
We did.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you don't have that much time left, so you're gonna be eating very soon, which is nice. You might be eating before we do.
Smells good.
Sent the link to my husband. Hopefully he's doing it from home.
Awesome.
You can have it twice.
There we go. And yes, I'm cheating by having the top on. It's nice. Having the broth kind of cuts back on a lot of the starches. So you're getting a lot of great flavor. It's not bubbling over. And the pasta is absorbing the liquid nicely. It's just a matter of let's get it done quicker. So when the pasta is done, what we're going to do is we're going to strain it. We're going to strain out all that liquid because we really don't need it because our sauce that we have has a lot of moisture in it. If the sauce was drier, we'd save just a little bit of that liquid just to give it more flavor, add more moisture to it. Once we drain it, we're going to put it back inside the pot, add more sauce to it, stir it all a bit so the pasta doesn't stick to the other strands of pasta, so we can plate it. And when we plate it, we're just going to put a little bit of meat sauce on the bottom of the plate, make it look pretty. We're going to use a fry pan to help us garnish the pasta and make it presentable. So you put one serving in a fry pan. You let's see if you can see it like this. You grab, twist until you make like a nice little ball almost. And then you transfer it over to your plate. By doing that, you're not making a big mess around your plate. And then from there, add a little bit more meat sauce. And then you can shave Parmesan cheese on top of it. And everyone's going to be really excited to eat it. and they're going to be happy, and they're going to have full bellies and think you're the greatest person and think you're better than sliced bread.
On a bias.
Yeah, sliced bread. Okay, let's give this a shot. Nice. It's al dente. Finally, we're going to take it off the heat. Take the top off, put that over here. As you can see, the water's brown. It's still going to be that way after cooking. And that's all flavor that's been absorbed into the pasta.
You don't rinse it, right?
No, don't rinse it. So we're going to put it right back inside. Get the strainer. Take the top off of this bad boy. We'll put it right here for now. We're going to get some meat sauce. On top. Tongs. Mix up the pasta so, again, it doesn't stick. This is why you don't need oil in your water, because in the pot itself, it's only going to float to the top. It's not really going to mix with the pasta to give it any justice. And oily pasta does not hold sauce very well. So let's do some plating now. Again, we're going to put some tomato sauce, meat sauce on the bottom. Give it a nice little smear so it looks like you're having meat sauce. We'll put this right over here for now. What I'm going to do is get my tongs, grab my fry pan, put it in a plate. That's about right. We're going to give it a couple of twists to kind of make it into a ball. Can you see that? We're making it into a ball. Get that straggling piece in there. Then we're going to move it over to the plate, slide it over, tilt, and then again, twist and turn. We'll put this here for now. I'm going to put more meat sauce on top. Grab our cheese. With a peeler, we're going to make a garnish.
Looks good, Aunt. Do you deliver?
Only Tuesdays, Fridays, and Thursdays. Today's Wednesday. Well, also Wednesday. It's a special. And then we're just adding a little bit of that. And then if you want, you could also add some fresh basil. Let's make sure we open it up. Just put that on top. And there you go. Fettuccine bolognese.
Nice job,
Looks
Aunt.
amazing.
And it's going to take flavors. Again, you're going to notice that there's going to be a big difference in the pasta. It's going to add a lot of flavor because we added the broth, the cheese on top. It's going to, even though we added cheese in the sauce.
Oh, there's the wine.
What's that?
The rest of the wine? Yeah, right there.
I want to come down and get a plate.
Awesome. Come on down. But this cheese on top, even though it's a garnish, it's going to add a lot more flavor and a little bit more saltiness to the dish to really make it enjoyable.
Perfect, yeah. Antonino, no chef finishes without tasting, so let's go.
He's ready.
Anja,
I was trying to be nice.
Nah, come on.
Manja.
And of course, you have to do the twist. The people, like, if you see them using a spoon, they're just novices. And it looks like I'm gonna
Don't
be,
break that fake fork.
I know, it's.
Yeah, it's a matter of that fork. You see
It's a
the
fork.
It's a bad fork.
It's important to have a nice sturdy fork.
Yes.
There's some. That's a lot of twisting for a little piece.
I know. But it's good.
Nice job, buddy.
Don't forget the bread.
Thank
You got
you.
the bread on the side, right?
Yeah, we got,
Man,
that's for afterwards, for dipping all the sauce that's left over.
Nice.
Best part.
Well, I hope you make it. Any questions, you can always reach out to me and ask any cooking advice or any questions that you may have. Call me anytime.
Antonino, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Antonino, where's the spoon? I thought the Italians used the spoon to twirl their pasta in.
Those are for-
Before we sign off, guys, Donna, do you want to give a quick update? I know we mentioned the fundraiser for Red Day at the beginning of the call. Do you want to do a quick update / just reminder?
Sure, we are going to be taking donations up until 4 o'clock tomorrow. Again, we have two $50 gift cards, a Visa. Oh, good. I'm glad Judy's showing the basket. There's a wonderful pot there with a strainer and a bunch of Italian goodies. That's our gift basket worth $100. 2 gift cards from Nick and Ileana at Get a Rate, and 1 Visa card from Shane Force at Atlantic. Thank you guys so much for helping with your donations. And thank you, everybody, for participating in the fundraiser. Again, $10 for 1 entry to win and $20 for 3 entries to my Venmo, which is in the chat.
Great. And Christina can post a reminder on our Facebook page as well. So those who maybe couldn't attend live with us, she'll post a recording and can also contribute to the fundraiser. Great. Thank you, Antonino. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thanks, Antonino.
Thank you, Antonino.
Thanks.
thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Enjoy.